Hey everybody, Yvonne S. Been a minute. Been a little busy. And I wanted to get on here and thank you for all the rebirthday witnesses because and wishes, because it really, I've learned over the years the powerful transformative effects of the small acts of kindness, of the consideration of someone else without the judgment and the expectation, and never really experienced a relationship, at least long term, that felt like I was considered or cared about by others. And so the decades of narcissistic abuse, the desiring answers because I get what it is like to be in patterns of narcissistic traits, being raised in a cult and with narcissistic environment. At the time, unaware of it and the impact and the implications of it as I came to learn. And I'm on here to not only thank everybody who I haven't gotten to as well for your consideration, your time, your energy, for the messages, for taking the time and energy to share on my wall and wish me happy birthday. And it's meaningful to me because so many people, we tend to, oh, sorry, I was busy, or, have you, and we all are. And it's not to discount that. It's also to say, when someone does take the time and energy, for me, I like to share my gratitude because I get the value of somebody's time and energy. And I also get the transformative value of somebody else's consideration and displayed an example of what it means to really care about another. And in a long journey in overcoming these patterns that I got set into as a very young child, even before birth, really. And I wanted to share my why to help understand when I share things I do on social media, on videos and things. It is because I desire people experience and feel my intention and hopefully clear any lenses of perceptions of me that are likely coming from a lens of your experiences and beliefs and perspective that maybe it doesn't resonate with or it triggers in some way. And so I wanted to get on here and share my intention, my perspective, my why, to clear any potential misconceptions and or judgments, assumptions, whatever that people may have about me, about what I'm sharing. Because I'm sharing from experience, from direct feeling. And that I have come to realize is one of the most important ways to learn. Because growing up in the cult that I grew up in, being told and taught what is real and true for me, for my journey, for how I should live, what I should think, what I should feel, what I should do, what I should believe, I did those things. I followed the rules, I followed the laws, I did all the things I was told to do according to what others were sharing and telling me was real and true for me. And who to be and how to be, and I'm observing my environment. And that's how I learned, right? That's how I learned how to behave, how to be an adult. As I grew older, picking up what I was being shown in my environment, which was narcissism, which was interesting because then as I became older, I always cared about people. I always, as a young age, I always wanted to help people or loved helping people. And as I got older and enduring so much abuse so consistently from so many places in my environment, that when I became an adult, I realized I got into relationships that were that way. That here I'm trying to love them how I knew how I was taught how, or how I was shown in my environment how to be in a relationship or be as a person. And when I would genuinely share out of love, I felt attacked. Or they had some agenda, or they were using, or they didn't love me the same in return as much as I loved them. And I didn't understand it because isn't that normal? Isn't it normal to love? And then how I was loving was completely toxic, yet that's how I was taught to love, how I was taught to be. So when I share what I share, and it's coming from a lot of looking and a lot of research and a lot of experience and experiencing as I'm researching, as I'm trying all these different things and learning all these different things from all these different people and all these different stories from all these different backgrounds and experiences, and being told, no, that's not true. No, don't listen to them. No, don't talk to them. No, stay away from them. They're bad. They're wrong. So I did for a long time. Judge people, criticize people, just assumed, projected. I did all the things that I share about, which is why I'm sharing what I'm sharing. Because it's interesting how we tend to rush to judgment and rush to assumptions about someone and have a perception of them in our mind when have we asked questions? Have we sought to understand who they are, why they believe what they believe, learn their perspective and experience so that we can gain a clearer, more accurate picture of the situation or them? Or do we listen to other people's perception and experience of what is truth for us and then accept it as truth for us about ourselves or others? I did for decades. And my life was hell. I went through a lot of hell and a lot of abuse from a lot of people that loved me. So that really is what set me on my journey of looking for answers to questions that many weren't even asking, because their life wasn't as challenging and they had likely some kind of support system to feel like, okay, they have my best interest, so I can trust them. And even then, what do they say? The path to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So a lot of well-meaning people with well-meaning reasons for what they believe and why they believe it and why they do what they do. And that's the point. It's, hey, listen to other people's journeys and stories and perspectives, and we learn more about who we really are and who they are more accurately, more deeply, which then helps us see how we're showing up, helps us see how they're showing up. And from the conditioning I came from and these abusive relationships I endured for many years, and enduring a lot of, having CPTSD myself for a long time, massive insecurities, felt I was too stupid to work at a gas station when I just graduated, scholarship tore up, told I needed to pursue God's work. The irony. And as I was scared to step outside of this comfort zone of toxicity, because of the Stockholm syndrome, because of the grasp that others and the way I was brought up and told and taught what's real and true for me, about me. And if I didn't obey, and if I did this or that, I would be punished by God. And they were the authority on what that was too, that I should listen to and believe and accept as my truth. And I did it because I trusted them. And at the same time, I'm reading things, I'm observing people, and there was this conflict. And I'm like, it was hypocrisy, essentially. I'm reading what's being shared. I'm reading the example of what Jesus said, Buddha said, Krishna, pick one. And the principles that they were teaching that I intuitively made sense to me, yet, and then I would be that way and yet be attacked or judged or shamed or guilted or punished in some way for simply speaking my truth, simply sharing and speaking from what I was taught it is to what they said these words and things mean, what these translations of things mean. So as a child, I'm speaking up and sharing my truth, and I'm getting punished for it. So then what happens? I shut my truth down to appease someone else, to conform to their reality and their version of reality and truth, when it was that I was simply sharing a truth they didn't want to hear because they didn't like the mirror that it put up as to how they were being and knew. And what's one of the biggest causes of stress is when we should do something and we're not. Or we have an expectation, and it's not the reality of what we're being shown. I could go down a rabbit hole, and at the same time I get on here to say how I've come through a lot of what people are going through, especially in PTSD, CPTSD, that are enduring abuse, and desiring people know my intention and motive for what I share and why is not to tell anyone what to believe, what is truth or not. It is to share a perspective of a possibility that maybe we don't have all the information on, and not have a clear picture of a possibility of something that could be going on. Like I share in my blog, I wanted to go to Mexico, and I'd been hearing about it from other friends. And during this time, there was a lot of people that were on the news. There was all this stuff on the news, these murders and kidnappings going on in the area and all this stuff. And yet I had friends down there saying something different. So I'm like, I want to see for myself. And I had other friends that never been there criticizing me and telling me I was crazy for going there. And then it turns out it was one of the best choices and experiences I've ever had. And if I had listened to somebody else's version of truth, especially that was only based on something third hand or less, and not firsthand of what I was hearing from friends who were there, then I started to realize how other people can really influence our path and our purpose and our trajectory and what we're meant to see for us in our journey and our truth of our feeling experiences, which is felt. Because we can only know something until we feel the truth of it. And that is how I have come to learn what I have is coming through the toxic, narcissistic traits that I had learned and didn't like how I was feeling. I didn't like how I was treating others. I didn't like what outcomes were showing up in my life. So I did something about it. I took action. I asked questions. I was humble enough to listen to another perspective that didn't have the titles and the papers and the degrees and the followers and the age and the gender and the color and the whatever label we want to give something that is beyond labels. Whatever gender we try to give something that is beyond gender, something that is beyond belief systems in general. And who are we being as human beings? And why are we believing and thinking and saying and doing what we are? Have we really bothered to ask and question it? Well, many have likely not been in through the experiences that many who have been in some deep hells have looked for answers to questions beyond these things, because we realized, well, if this is all there is to existence, and this is what I have to put up with, other people using, manipulating, gaslighting to get their needs met, and I have to just take it, and because of this or that, because somebody told me I had to obey them or threaten my safety if I didn't, threaten my way of being if I didn't comply to their version of reality and truth from their experience and perspective that didn't resonate with me, didn't make sense to me. So what examples and what applications are we demonstrating through our choices and behaviors to each other and to ourselves as well? Because I realized what it means. Well, first of all, I had to realize what love really is. Because what I was taught love was abuse and gaslighting and manipulation. And that I had to do this to be worthy of it, or I had to do that to be worthy of it, or I had to listen to these people to be worthy of it, to be worthy of receiving it from another. I had to prove myself. I had to earn it to get the affection and attention that shouldn't we naturally get? Aren't we all creations of God? Aren't all of them saying that? And yet we're separating things as though it's separate. When I looked and I saw all these different cultures and religions, and I stepped outside of what I was told, oh, don't look at that. Don't look at other perspectives. Don't listen to other people. They're wrong. They're bad. Well, I traveled the world to find out, and boy, was I lied to on a deep level about who and what I am, about who and what others are, about who and what we should be, think, feel, say, do for our journey. When we have, and we're told right in our faces in any text, free will, what do we think that means? Only if you're Christian? Only if you're Muslim? Only if you're Hindu? Only if you're this or that? You're the only ones worthy of it? So the consideration is the highest form of love, because when we take the time and the energy to listen, to really listen, to understand, to listen out of care for another, their journey. What is most people's issue? They weren't heard as children. They weren't listened to. Their perspective wasn't valued. Their truth was shut down. So then they learn to shut themselves down. And then as they get older, shut their truth down and mask, so that we didn't offend anybody else with a perspective that may be accurate, and they just might not want to hear it because they're making choices they know they shouldn't, but they want to punish us for it and project on us their lens from their experience of their unhealed trauma that they don't want to face because it's scary, unknown, unfamiliar. It's a even if, people stay I stayed in toxic relationships for so long because it was safe. It was comfortable. It was familiar. It's what I knew. I didn't know anything outside of that. And it took force for me to get outside of that because I was so terrified. And yet my experiences essentially pushed me out the door to where I did have a choice. I could have complied. I could have kept playing small. I could have let them keep abusing me and manipulating me and gaslighting me and me draining myself and giving myself of myself that I love to do. And it also is powerful when it's reciprocated. So when we consider one another in our authentic self and take off the mask and uncover the shame that we've been made to feel by people that have no idea until they have listened to multiple perspectives and learned from multiple backgrounds, multiple stories, because it's all stories. It's all stories. Stories, whether they are literal or figurative, can't we learn from all of it? Isn't 1 Corinthians, doesn't it say love believes all things? Because I realized what was real and true and good and bad and right and wrong. I even studied occult knowledge. I wanted to, okay, what's the other side doing? Because clearly there's something wrong here. So let me see what's going on here. And then did a bunch of stuff to meet in the middle to find the balance of, for me, my existence is demonstrating what it is and means to love unconditionally, not be perfect, by the way, because it is the mistakes that when we are taught to learn from them versus judge, shame, guilt, and punish for making them and taught to learn from them, then we see the value of the mistakes that we've made. And I've made some pretty bad ones and pretty traumatic ones. And held on to that shame for a long time. And others using who I used to be, who I was, even though I didn't know any different or better. I was judged for it, shamed for it, and it was used as a over the barrel kind of thing to keep me in line and in control. Until a lot of years and a lot of shit later. And so my why is to save people time, money, and energy, to escape the prison of our minds, the enslavement of our minds with our words, because our words are what we've been taught to use that are shaping how we're seeing, how we're showing up for ourselves and others or not. And I desired to be and do better, so that I was not unfairly projecting my unhealed trauma onto others, which I did. And I've been there. So what I share, and when I share something for on Facebook or a video or what have you, it is for others' best interest, because I'm creating my life. I'm sharing authentically from the heart, which is why I wanted to do a live versus a recording, is so that people could know and hear and feel it's not scripted, and that there is somebody who does care, because I know what it was like, and that's why I value others' consideration of me, because I know I have learned amazing, powerful insight from just a dishwasher, as well as from one of the most brilliant people in the world, many people, brilliant people in the world, and everywhere in between, by them just being them as a human being, as somebody who considers and cares and loves and has been there and knows what it's like to be dismissed, judged, disregarded, as not being valuable because we didn't have the life and the paper and the titles and the degrees and not to discount those by any means. If it is in line with helping others and what we love to do, then hey, whatever it takes, right? This isn't to judge people that do have those things. I know many experts that are brilliant, and what I learned and how I started to understand how I'm manifesting and creating my reality is coming across those who had others and my best interests in mind, and not some agenda or ulterior motive or some expectation of me to do, be, say, think, feel, believe a certain way. That they were sharing because I was in patterns unknowingly. And if they weren't brought to my attention, and sometimes it took many times, it took a 2x4 to the face for me to wake up to how I was being and why. And then as I learned a process and I learned how language played a role in that, and I started to shift these things about myself, change myself first, before I dare give anybody else any kind of advice and feedback other than a perspective, and also not feeling like I could really market myself or sell myself, because one, I felt like, well, I just sound like everybody else out there. How am I going to set myself and what I have to share apart from anybody else? Well, the only way I know how is to show up and share with people that there is no expectation or judgment. I'm not sharing for any agenda, any ulterior motive. I don't need your money. I don't need anything other than I'm simply sharing for your best interest because I care enough to. And I cared enough to learn, and I cared enough to give up a life of ease and comfort to look for the answers to the questions that were deeper than the surface stuff that was going on, that I just intuitively knew was there, but didn't even know what I was looking for, really. Just wanted to know how the mind works, how the body works, physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and understand why people were the way they were and are. Because look where we are. And we keep choosing leaders. Are they authority or are they leaders? Because leaders take others into consideration. And if we're just arguing like children, pointing the finger, the blame, I'm not going to trust that to lead me. If they're not going to show by their works that they care about my best interests, then I don't have to listen to them, nor will I. And we all have our journey. It's all individual. It's all simply being connected in community and consideration of one another so that we can gain some perspective, maybe help us if in some situation. And that is what the Freak is about. And that is what has led me to where I am now, and what I feel and believe and think is that now, because I uncovered the shame of the lies and the judgment and the guilt, and freed myself of other people's perceptions of me in a sense that didn't have my best interests, and that I tended to care what they thought, yet why? They didn't give a shit about me. So why am I trying to even impress them or work with them or what have you? I give people opportunities. I forgive. I'm willing to, I get what it is to make mistakes and not be perfect. It has nothing to do with perfection. And that's an illusion too, because that's all going to be perspective as well. The idea of perfection is an illusion because it's going to be based on the perceiver, what their idea of perfection is, or what they were taught perfection is. So I'm on here because we can have fun. We can move past these things when we have people that consider us as human beings, as having value, regardless of the titles, the followers, the papers, the letters, the degrees, whatever. And they listen with the intent to understand one another. I recently went to an event with a friend of mine who, completely different age, completely different gender, completely different color, and a mind-blowing presentation that shared a perspective and a perception that was about slavery. And it also made me realize, I came from a form of slavery as well. Different, similar outcome. The manipulation and the control of another on our minds, on our choices, our free will, which is actually reaping karma on them. And then when we think of epigenetics, which is how our genes or our genetics are based on the language we use, as well as downloaded pre-programmed stories from our ancestry that we inherit, which we inherit more than just the physical traits, more than just the dis-ease. We inherit the dis-ease of their traumas and their stories. And they all really fundamentally come down to basic ones that are influencing everything and everybody and keeping them in a low, tight, constricted, stressed out state and afraid of facing something outside of their known world because it's unfamiliar and unknown. And yet, when we look at our stories, the unknown can become known. Because are we in patterns of behaviors, limiting belief systems, coping mechanisms, things that our parents did or their parents did, or so on, that are impacting and causing us to run on autopilot and make choices on autopilot, not really contemplating and being mindful of the choices we are making and why. And based on what? And who? And do they have our best interests? Or are they unconscious patterns we're in that we need to wake up from so that we can free ourselves from that constricted, perceived safety that's familiar and known, yet how do we feel? Really? How do we feel? Are we happy? Are we fulfilled? Are we having fun? Are we able to connect and share with others authentically and be ourselves with them? Or do we feel like we have to keep up with the Joneses or kind of put on an air of their definition of success or their definition of worth listening to or being considered, so we mask to fit in to other people's version of reality when we're all creating our own with what we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we're believing, what we're saying, what we're doing, which is our perceptions. Well, our words are what's shaping our perceptions. Our perceptions are determining our emotions, and our emotions are the frequency that's amplified. And when sound is amplified, it creates a feedback loop that comes back to us. So what we are feeling about what we are seeing is what is going to show up in our experience and create ease or dis-ease that will manifest in the physical. Starts in the spiritual, manifests in the physical. That's physics. And when we are willing to listen to the simplicity of it and be willing to apply it in the safety of a space where we can self-express us, who we are, what we choose to be, believe. Are we willing to look at another perspective and change a potentially limited or toxic behavior to be and do better as a human being and realize there is another way, there is a better way? And what are we willing to do about it? Or are we so codependent and conditioned? And it's deep. It's taken me years to uncover a lot of the gaslighting and the effects of the gaslighting and how it impacted my perception of myself and others and the choices it was causing me to make in my life unknowingly for many years, affecting everyone around me and myself negatively. And that was a deep hell, is an internal prison. And the internal prisons are the worst kind because we look like we're free. And yet, what is real freedom? What is real freedom? Is it a free country? We're made in the image of God. Who is anybody to tell us where we can and cannot go, who we can and cannot be, what we should and shouldn't think? Especially if it's not shared out of love and consideration for us and others. So what I share, what I express on Facebook, in my blogs, in my videos, with others who I'm around, I'm simple. I'm a simple person. I realized, I did all the things. Okay, I've done all the things. Everything I know now, I learned the hard way. Okay, I was at Hollywood parties and the music and movie industry, and all the glamour and the glitz, all the cool stuff I was taught is what is success and what it means to be cool and a part of something and to be somebody. It was toxic. It was toxic. And people were on me like vultures because I was coming from a genuine place, and they're like, oh my God, somebody who loves and shares, and let me just take some of that. So I felt like a pig going to slaughter. And I also met some really amazing people and genuine people and authentic people there. So whatever environment we're in is going to be met with the same shit. Same shit, different place, different gender, different age, different group, it all comes down to the same shit. How are we being to ourselves and to others? Because we're really overcomplicating a lot of stuff that's not complicated. And we can have fun. And we're so busy judging and assuming and criticizing and projecting and separation and division, and that we're not looking at the commonalities. The universe, the one verse that I saw in my travels, in my experiences, asking the questions that most weren't asking, and that mainstream, secular, scholarly, none of them were talking about. None of them were saying it. I was learning an education that was far beyond, little did I know at the time, far beyond anything that they could teach. And learned something that taught me the greatest freedom I could ever feel. And I simply desire others to feel this level of freedom too. And it's by the acceptance of whatever people's free will is, as long as we are operating in the best interests of each other. That's the only reason corporations exist. Because there used to be the handshake, remember? There used to be the man-to-man or whatever contracts, right? Their word meant something. Corporations were created because they wanted to slip in a little deceit here, a little deceit there, and be able to get away with it. Hey, you agreed to this. You consented to it. What do we sign? What is our signature that we're signing? That's a whole other rabbit hole that I'll get to at some point. And I simply wanted to get on here and share how grateful I am to those who have been and shown consideration of me in a simple post, a simple birthday wish, a simple whatever. You took the time and energy, and I know how valuable it is to have somebody consider you and take the time and energy to write a message, to do the simple acts of kindness that make all the difference. Because it's been those simple acts of kindness from all the people in my life through my journey that kept me going when I felt like giving up many times because of the hell I was enduring. So I hope this explains the why I share what I do that may come across. It might trigger people. It might trigger some core beliefs or have a perspective of me that I wanted to clear and make sure is accurate in where I'm actually coming from and not based on a lens that somebody else is seeing me through from their level of awareness and perspective and experience. Happy to hear. And this is why asking questions and seeking to understand another is so valuable. Because then we see we're all just humans trying to get through this shit that we've allowed others to tell us is real and true for us and our journey individually and our connection to our source individually. That we find through experiencing the good, the bad. And to shield people from experiencing is infringing on their free will, which does reap the karma. We don't know that because we're not taught that. So then we wonder why our lives are a struggle. And we're going to meet with challenges. This isn't to say it's not about being perfect. It is about being willing to observe, remove ourselves emotionally, not remove the emotion. The emotion is the power, the energy in motion that drives the creation of what we're creating in our reality and what's showing up in our experiences and why. And so when I share things, it's because I've been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt. Own the wardrobe, okay? This isn't judgment by any means. This isn't criticism by any means. This is, yeah, I see it because I've been there. I see it because I did it. Just like a child, as a parent, they try to get away with their shit. And they try to justify and excuse and whatever to get out of being in trouble. Let's stop shaming people for making mistakes and let's start listening and considering another and saying, well, maybe there's a better and another way. Or maybe it came from this adopted belief system as a child, or maybe this came from some pattern that you witnessed from your parents as you were growing up and learning how to be an adult. And then the religious belief systems, that's a whole other rabbit hole as well. Because that taught me to play small, to protect others' smallness, to actually make me believe that God is something separate from us. What was the beginning? If you're Christian, what was in the beginning? Adam and Eve, covered themselves in shame. Well, I'm coming to realize that they were covered in shame based on the belief they were separate in the first place. And then we allowed men, the Israelites, wanted the visible king. They argued with God. They were going through the wilderness for 40 years and then they were all complaining and ungrateful, which is another key one and another rabbit hole. Gratitude for it all. And here God was providing for them, and their sandals didn't wear out, their clothes didn't wear out, they had manna, they had food, they had all their basic needs met, right? And they wanted more. And so then they wanted the visible king because the nations had him. So God's like, well, haven't I provided for you? Haven't I done for you? Directly, individually, as a group, haven't I been there for you? Well, yeah, but we still want more. So he's like, okay. Visible king wasn't a small choice either, because then they're saying, hey, we want something we can see to believe. And God said, okay, and it will not go well for you. And when I read that changed my world and how I saw all these people I was going to, these religious leaders, these people that I was supposed to be able to trust with these difficult things, like my children being kidnapped and not knowing when I was going to see them again. And so these things that came up in my life, that I went to a trusted position of authority that I was taught to believe had my best interest and was speaking for God. So I go to them. Oh, I've never been through that, so I don't know how to help you. So I read that and I was like, oh, why am I even going through these other imperfect people that clearly don't have my best interests at heart? So that's when I started to really look for answers to questions that a lot of people weren't asking. And that's what led me to the ultimate freedom in figuring out what the freak was going on for me. And I simply desire to share a perspective that may benefit others, that may either bring to their awareness patterns they could be in, like I was in, that I didn't know about, that I wish I knew I was in, because it would have saved me a lot of time and energy and money had I known before. And at the same time, I realized the power and the value of experiencing the hard way. So we're free to choose, and we are not free from the consequences of our choices. So I simply desire to be here as somebody who genuinely cares authentically for others and shares from a experienced perspective that may benefit you. And if it triggers you, well, then why? And let go of the shame that we've been made to feel that others have used to hold us over a barrel or string us along, or whatever it is they use for their agenda to get their needs met so they didn't have to face their own shit. Again, because it's deep and there's a lot going on behind the curtains that a lot of people are unaware of and don't want to become aware of because it's so far outside what they can even process, really. And at the same time, it's being uncovered. Are we going to bury our head in the sand and think that somehow we're going to be absolved of facing it at some point? And why not face it now while we have the time and the connection on this level to come together, to listen, to learn, to understand, so that we can realize, hey, I know how I'm creating my reality now, and I'm good. I just desire others to have the same level of awareness and understanding so they can feel this way too, and not fear, not live in that lack and that scarcity and that unknown, like fear of the unknown outcome of what's going to happen and what have you. We can free ourselves of that and protect ourselves of that. Because as I'll share in the future with frequency, that's why I call it What the Freak, because freaks are judged, right? They're judged for being different. They're judged for not believing, feeling, thinking, saying, looking, believe as we do. And yet they were the most popular show in the circus. So why don't we stop letting the clowns that have been in charge distracting the audience from what was happening with the lion tamer getting attacked? So they were distracting the children. That's what the clowns was part of their job, was to distract the audience from what was going on behind the scenes. Yet the freak show was just the people being themselves, coming out there and doing them and getting fat cash. Even though they were judged and condemned and made fun of and laughed at, they were them and they were having fun. Same thing with pirates. A lot of people have a lot of misconception about pirates. How to Be More Pirate. Check it out. Awesome book. And let's come together in a community and let's take action and let's stop talking about it and doing something about it. Because all politicians are doing are talking a good game. What are they doing? Where are we as humanity? What's it going to take? How much worse does it have to get? I know my hell had to get pretty bad before I woke up. I'm simply trying to share people and spare them the level of suffering I endured. And we'll see where it goes. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your consideration. Thank you for being and doing you and being real. And should you want to reach out, should you want to connect, co-create, collaborate, so many people I'm meeting, so many awesome things are happening, and happy to share the wealth, because when we realize that it's all about frequency and that money's just symbolic of that, we have all we require when we require it. Abracadabra. Love you all.